if that's your internet or my internet. That's not good. Are you there? And you're frozen. Technical difficulties.
Okay, we're recording. We're good.
Well, now I don't have internet, and I just lost it.
Great.
Do we not have internet?
No,
I
it's not.
connected through guests and it worked.
Mine says I'm not authorized to use this.
Internal thing. Lisa, are you there?
It says I'm not authorized to utilize this for my email.
Lisa, can you hear us? Oh, my internet connection is unstable.
Okay, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, Lonnie, I don't have internet.
Okay. You got the right person there, yes. Figure out.
Okay.
Oh, Lisa, can you hear me?
I just heard you.
All right. I think we're just having intermittent internet issues.
Yes, I see you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the internet's not working very well here. Sorry, everybody.
It's okay.
Okay. All right, Lisa, why don't you start the audit committee with Kathy, and we'll try to get through it until we lose you again.
Ooh, holy cow,
Just got
okay.
frozen again. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. What was the first item on the agenda? Was it, hold on.
I don't have the agenda
It's
up.
review the minutes and then the claims auditor report. So review December minutes and then claims auditor report.
Would it help if we just saw her and didn't hear her? Would that make
Or
it?
heard her and didn't see.
That's what I mean.
Do you mind,
Is that what it said?
I'm gonna reboot
No.
this. There's 75 clients on it for some reason, which means it's connecting to,
Lisa, we're gonna lose you for a second.
we're gonna lose you for a second, I'm sorry, guys. There's half of the Macs and the Mac lab are connected to that for some silly reason.
I'll let you take the reboot button. There we go.
Is the owl making hoot hoot noises?
Yep.
About 90 seconds.
That's adorable. Didn't know it did that. Did it? No. Does it always? That is very cute.
Okay, it's back. Should we try connecting?
All right, Lisa, you're muted, but can you hear us?
I'm sorry, what?
All right, we're good to go. Let's go through it. First is claims auditor's report.
Okay, at this time, I did not receive one in time for the meeting.
Okay.
The next item is the 24-25 revenue status report. The next item is the 24-25 revenue status report.
Okay, that I included so you can see how far we are in collecting our revenues. Right now, we are right on track. There are not any revenues that are lagging at this time.
The next is the appropriation status report summary with history.
That's a very small document, unfortunately. However, it summarizes where we're spending this current year and where we have spent the past 3 years. And again, our expenditures are right on track. we're doing fine.
Okay, the next is the lunch fund, profit and loss.
Yes, I reviewed the profit and loss with the district treasurer, and we did change a few items. As you can see right now, the lunch fund is operating at a loss. There are more expenditures than there are revenues. However, we do have a grant revenue that will come in the amount of like $9,000, so that will offset that loss. And we will continue to look for other revenue sources. The what helped last year was the state had an additional revenue source because the cost of goods were going up, and they gave us like a one-shot revenue, and that helped the lunch fund. But unfortunately, there aren't any one-shot revenues yet from the state to assist with the lunch fund.
And middle school can no longer use the Java Hut? Okay.
Lisa, are you aware of middle school students not using the Java Hut?
No, I am not.
No,
This is
that
the
was
first
not
I've heard
anything
of
that
it.
I was aware of, nor do I think that's true, but.
Okay. Another conversation for
School
another
kids.
time. But I just know that that's
Is
a.
there a concern that came up, Rachel, that?
Yeah, I was told, this was while I was under the weather, that they're no longer allowed to, they were previously from my own child.
Okay.
That they previously were not allowed to get caffeinated beverages, was my understanding, but now they're no longer allowed to access the Java Hut at all. I don't know if this is factual, this is no, I didn't get a second source or anything.
So, the Java Hut, for those who don't know,
No.
is
I
a
heard
coffee
it.
shop.
Oops, sorry.
You've heard that as well?
I heard that as well.
Yes, that's our revenue
I can
booster.
ask the principal that question,
Yeah,
and she can respond back to you guys regarding that.
That'd be
Since
great.
Since it's a revenue source, we wanna know.
Yeah, I'm unaware
Yeah.
of any of that.
That was that's how we sink money back into the pot, is my recollection.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm living in an echo right now, so my apologies if I sound weirder to everyone. I sound weird to myself. The next item, do you want me to keep going?
Yeah, because
Is
I
the
can't get in.
executive budget, 25-26, executive budget for aid to education, the Questar State Aid Planning Information.
Yes, I included that document so the board could familiarize yourselves with the executive budget proposal. The most important thing is that there is a 2% increase in foundation aid, and that is exactly what Voorheesville will receive under her proposal.
Okay. Are you ready for next item?
Yes?
Is the update on debt service borrowings from district financial advisors. The 25-26 expense budget will be impacted with the first payment for 25 million capital project and EPC project. Voters advised of a 2.5% tax increase in 2022.
So, Lisa, the gentlemen from Bernie
Yes.
Donegan are here, so if you want to introduce as well, and I'll leave it over to you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to introduce Chris and Jason, who are partners in Bernard P. Donegan. They will be presenting the presenting the long-range financial plan. So go ahead, Chris and Jason, take it away.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jason Schwartz. I'm the president at Donegan Incorporated. This is Chris Carlo, vice president of Donegan Incorporated. So I think Lisa was saying, as she cut out there, we have a debt service budget impact that we're going to go through with you tonight. Just kind of high level, in more detail during the audit committee meeting, if you'd
Is
like.
this what is in the paper?
Yeah.
I don't need
okay.
it then, thank you.
And then a lot of this information will also then flow through into the long-range plan that we're going to be presenting later during the actual board meeting. So we can kind of just go through at a high level with the debt service budget, and then as, if we want more detail, we can dig into it. Basically, this is a document that we put together for all the districts we work with each year to help with the capital planning part of your budget, which of course is very critical to manage, this tax cap era with the capital exclusions that you get and how that impacts your tax cap calculations. So what's on the screen here on the front page is kind of what we call like a one-year snapshot. So this is all the different pieces of your debt. When you look at the full packet, there's underlying pages for every single authorization you have that you've done that still has debt and or aid, so you can add it all back up to that total if you want to double check the math. But on the front page here, basically what you've got going on in 25-26, this top line here, serial bonds for school construction, that's all your existing debt from prior capital projects. So any of your older projects that are outstanding, those are the totals. So those are known numbers that are locked in and will not change. Serial bonds for bus purchases, that is kind of a mix, a blend of existing and projected. So you have a few bus bonds that you've done in the past, as well as a few new bus bonds that we're projecting, both the one that you voted last May that we're getting ready to finance right now, and then also projections for this upcoming budget year. So that's what's in that bus purchase line. And then the next two lines relate to the current capital projects. So you've got the current school construction project. You have a ban outstanding for that you issued last July. It'll be coming due this coming July. So we know that interest payment of $562,000, and we're projecting a principal payment of $290,000. That number could change if we wanted to. That's kind of up to us, but that was, as we'll discuss in the long range plan, that was sized to try to get to that 2.5% increase that had previously been told to the public, as well as the energy performance contract that's kind of goes hand in hand with that project, is running in parallel. So we're planning on financing that this spring and having a interest payment for that as well next year. And then we also have the $100,000 capital outlay projects that you do the cash projects or transfer to capital. And then down on the bottom part of this summary page, you can see the projections for aid. So you get a little over $1 million in building aid and just under $200,000 in transportation aid to help pay for all those projects from the state. And that leaves the tax levy of $756,000. So that is that piece that goes into the capital exclusion and plays into the tax cap. Okay. So that's the one-year snapshot, and then like I said, there's all the details in here if anybody wants to go through it, has any specific questions. Just a few other things that we would call your attention to highlight.
I got you.
If you go to page 3,
Yep.
Which is a summary page.
I'm really good at scrolling, so.
So this is kind of the summary where we put it all together. So we have that single year snapshot on the front page, which helps, Lisa and Christy, the district, what to put in for next year's budget. This is kind of more of like a long range planning tool. We use this summary page so we kind of see, are there any spikes in the future? Are there any, dips where we should plan for capital projects? So not really too much to go through in detail on this, but just to point out that is a tool that we use and update, each year with the district, so we can kind of see what's on the horizon and make sure we plan accordingly. Because if you wait until the dip is there, it's too late to do anything with it. So that helps us kind of always be planning forward. And this local share setup is kind of in line with our understanding of what was presented to the public on the current capital project in terms of having a 2.5% increase in this upcoming year, 25-26, for about 15 years, and then it drops back down to a lower, like 1.1% increase as that bus garage portion goes out further, because that was a new building, so it has a longer payback period. And then, Frank, do you want to go to?
I just want to really quickly, and I thank Jason for this, and Lisa and I have been talking about it, is this really helps us understand when that fall off is going to happen, when we have to reset it. And Lisa, when did you say probably our next capital project's going to have to be?
Probably within 5 years. You should be thinking about now what you want to go out to vote, and then it takes about 5 years.
So going out to a vote within 3 years makes sense, so that way when we hit the 5-year mark, the debt is there, and that way we're not trying to play catch-up later on, which occurs from time to time. We're just doing it right when it all occurs in the right moment of time, correct? And there's a delay.
She nodded.
She nodded, all right, so I just want to clarify that.
Yep.
Well, you
And
can
then
see.
if you wanna go to, page 15, next strike 15 and 16 are the financial plans. for the
Could you,
building
wait,
project. Yep.
could you differentiate between the green and the blue here on this?
Yep, the
Graph.
blue is for the, building projects and the green is for the buses.
Thank you.
And that's why you'll kind of see the green tapers off as you go, and that's really just, we have that note there that we only projected out for the next 5 years of bus purchases. Technically, if you continue to, replace buses on a similar schedule, then those green bars can continue out
Mhm.
into the future, but, we only went out as far as the long-range plan did for bus purchases at this
Okay,
time.
thank you.
Yep.
Any questions before we move on to 15?
I had a question, you may be getting to it later about reserves, because I thought I saw in here on one of the pages, and I can't find it quickly right now, where it looked like reserves would be wiped out. Maybe
Not in this one, probably, that'll be the next presentation, we talk about the long-range plan.
Oh, okay.
There are some, looking at reserves on that.
okay.
And that's always the doom and gloom of a long-range plan in the future, so
Yep.
they'll go through that. So like the wiping out of reserves is like, wait up. You know, it's like-
Yeah, okay.
We're not wiping the reserves out.
I can wait.
So in all these pages that Frank's going through right now, these are just the different authorizations, so again, that just gives you that full picture and history detail if you wanna look at it. But just kinda to give you the visual picture of where we're at with the open capital projects, so this, again, is your, current capital project. On the top part of the page, you've got the state aid boxes, so there's a lot that goes into managing these projects to get that, 68-69% back from the state and building aid in terms of forms we have to file, so we've got projections for all that up top. And then just in terms of the financial plan, what we're planning on, again, we had the $12.5 million ban that you issued this past July. That's coming due July 10th of '25, so our current plan is to renew that note in July of '25 and go out to July of '26. So that renewal will not impact the '25-26 budget at all. It'll be in the following year, '26-27. But when we have that ban payment coming due and then ultimately convert to the bond, we also will have the building aid start flowing, and that will help offset that. So we're trying to match those up as well. And then on the next page, just kind of the other big piece that is the, in terms of corporate financings, is the lease financing for the energy performance contract. So we are in the process of working on that right now. We had a tentative date of this May, maybe May or may spill into April, but we're gonna be putting that lease financing into place shortly. And that will have interest only the first year, and then once the building aid gets started, as we close that project out, then we will transition in '26 and '27 beyond to having an annual principal interest payment to match up with the building aid. So that's kind of where the current capital projects stand in terms of financings. And then if you go, just back up to page 14 real quick, Frank, if you don't mind.
Yep.
The other thing we do with these documents that's especially important, especially when talking about budget planning, and I know Lisa mentioned earlier the executive budget proposal. We do this analysis of the executive budget proposal, what we call like the reconciliation to the government runs. Just by a matter of like nuance or details, but anytime you have these new projects, what we call Chapter 97 projects, which is anything that got SED approval after July of 2011, the governor does not account for those in her aid runs if you haven't filed the final cost reports by the November database freeze, but you will receive that money if you close out and file your final cost reports. So you'll see on these highlighted green lines, if you were to look at the executive budget proposal for next year, the governor's only projecting $637,000 of state aid on the building aid side for you as a district, and we would recommend that you budget planning based on just over the $1 million that we have there, because that is what you will actually receive if we close out those final cost reports, but the governor's number just doesn't have that in there. But that's why we always kind of, show our work and tie out exactly to what we're telling you to budget and why it's different than the governor's numbers in case you were to get a tax cap audit from OSC once you file that. So that's your backup and documentation for the reasons why you'll receive that extra $432,000 a day on the $25 million project based on when we know finals are going to go in.
And with the capital construction project, we do have a set date where we will be able to close that out. So we just have to work with our construction manager or GM to make sure that all of it does go into fruition to make sure that we can hit those deadlines to close out so aid can work.
So it can be, so that aid can be budgeted for post, like, start of the fiscal year, as long as we submit, so it can be retro?
Right, this is based on as long as we file final cost reports by, what do we have it down?
December 25 for phase 1 and June 26 for phase 2. Sorry, December 26 for phase 2.
Right, so the phase 2 aid, we're not projecting anything yet based on closeouts, but phase 1, which is the transportation building, as long as we file the forms by December of 25, then you will receive that $432,000. And if there was any reason why there is a holdup because of contractors, issues closing out, there is a form that we can fill out as a waiver to try to get the aid started if it's out of our control, that we can't file those final cost reports. So we would feel confident saying you can project that number, you should receive that based on what we understand of the project right now.
Lisa?
Yes?
Anything that they missed or that we're good with, or any follow-up or statements?
I think that page 14 is extremely helpful, just to know that whatever is in the governor's proposal, we know that there are additional building aid funds out there, and I thank Chris and Jason for this presentation. It's extremely helpful for the district for the current upcoming fiscal year and long-range planning, so thank you for your assistance.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
So there's no other specific questions on the debt service itself. Like I said, a summary version of this will also be in the long-range plan, but we'll also get some of the other questions in terms of future projections at that time when we discuss the long-range plan in a few minutes.
Thanks, guys.
The next item on the agenda is that the external audit dates were established for May 12th and 13th and the week of July 21st.
Yes, we're all set, and we're looking forward to the upcoming audit.
Fantastic. And then the last thing is that the next audit committee meeting is scheduled for April 7th, 2025. So, there you go.
Thank you for that, since I was not up in the.
All right. With that, we can move directly into our regular board meeting, right? You good with that, Kathy?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for
Thank you,
joining
Lisa.
us.
But she's gonna
Well,
stay
they-
on.
Yeah,
We'll
see you, we'll talk to you again soon.
You guys are just
Um,
gonna wait until we get to the next one.
So we'll have a quick roll call of trustees. Rob was not able to join us tonight, as was our student board member. Joey Russo will not be with us tonight. We hope to see him again in March. Hard to believe next month is March. With that, we're going to go to item 1.4. There's a flag at the corner of the room over there. Pledge of the allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all. We have a number of items for the good of the order. I'm going to ask Frank to bring us one item, which is a recent one.
All right, so, if you haven't seen our recent school messenger, we did send out a press release regarding an incident that occurred on Thursday, January 30th. There was members of our school community were found in possession of THC vapes. The principals immediately, and luckily, they found this right after school and addressed the situation very, very quickly. Contacted parents, enforced our code of conduct, and went through it. But after they did that, they also found out during this investigation that those vapes were actually brought on property by a non-student who was an adult, older than 18 or older. So they've been working with law enforcement. So after Thursday, it was an ongoing law investigation. A police report was filed, And today, we were notified that the individual who did bring those vapes on property to the students after school was arrested. So I thank Albany County Sheriff's Department for working so diligently with our staff and quickly. Within a few days, they were able to get the evidence that they needed to be able to address this person who was taking advantage of minors on school property and doing the situation. So I appreciate their support, and I thank the principals for their fast action in addressing the situation. But I did want to kind of bring that forward literally because we just were made notice of it tonight that the arrest occurred, so that's why we did send it out a few days later, but we did not want to impede the investigation by doing so prior to that.
Thank you.
Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Also, for the good of the order, we send congratulations and kudos to Coach Joe Sapienza, who was named the Chapter 2 Athletic Director of the Year. So many congratulations to Joe for this honor and accomplishment. Definitely a good guy. Then there was a talent show at the elementary school, and I did not get to see it. I don't know if anyone here did. Were you able to get to it?
Yeah, so I did actually get to go to it.
Were you in it?
I'm a little biased, so being a former music teacher, I think it's just, I love watching kids be talented and showcase their talent. I thank Dollars for Scholars for putting this together each year. It's a great fundraiser where they give over $30,000 to our graduates each year. So these fundraisers are great, and this is a great community fundraiser. Grades K through 5 were involved, including our teachers who did a Weemaway, which was awesome. Like the Lions tonight, fantastic. I'm biased because my daughter sang in it and I don't play piano. So yes, I was there, kind of biased, again. But it was an awesome night, and Jeff Aventio did an amazing job as the MC supporting the students in the school community.
I got one.
Excellent.
So
Great.
the advisory council to the school counseling program met again in January. And I just wanted to highlight some of their work in terms of the care corner that is in Mrs. Goodwin, or Miss Goodwin's office. It's basically a pantry for students who have a need to stop in and obtain, personal care products, snacks, those sorts of things. And it is being used not as much as we would like, but students are using it and have started to request certain items that they need, which I think is great. The same is happening with the elementary school pantry, which has been up and running. We got to visit it last year, I think, and it's amazing. They recently surveyed the community for interest. They received 36 responses, which that's great, but again, we think that there's more need than we're seeing. So if anyone who's listening to this does have a need or knows of someone who does, feel free to spread the word. All of this can be accessed confidentially and is a great resource for our community.
Thank you. Thanks for bringing that forward. And I believe that there's information if you want to access it or support it or in the newsletters that the principals send out.
Yes,
So.
you're right.
All right. Were there other items? No? Okay. Are we placing bets on Thursday that we're supposed to get a couple inches of snow right during the morning rush? About any
See
delays?
how it goes.
Okay.
I have 3 snow days on file, so we're ready to rock.
Delay? 2-hour delay. With that, we have the opportunity for the public to be heard. There's a podium over here. We welcome any member of the public who has a topic they'd like to bring forward to come to the podium to be heard. Okay. We welcomed Chris and Jason here during our audit meeting and during the audit committee meeting, and we now have a long-range planning presentation for 3.1. And Frank remains at the keyboard.
So before Chris and Jason go on with this, Lisa, we're about to start the long-range plan. I don't know if you want to say something, but I will really quick. Lisa when she came on as interim business official, we looked at our financial planning, and she brought Chris and Jason on board, and we went through it, and we're working with them now to work with a long-range financial plan and analysis as we look at our budget. I have to say, working with them this year, Lisa's nodding her head, I've been very impressed with the plan and this debt services plan that you just looked at in the audit, and with this long-range financial analysis has allowed Lisa and I to really look at this budget in a new light and truly understand what we have to do this coming year and how we utilize this information to set really strong procedures and deadlines and timelines on borrowing and when we borrow and when we don't borrow to make sure that we're keeping the district even in better financial stability than what we have been. So I really appreciate their efforts, and I kind of presetted you guys a little bit. Lisa, anything you want to say in that regard? And Lisa?
All good.
Okay. All right, so we'll leave it on to you guys.
Is there a clicker on you, or just tell you?
You just point at me and I got this. It makes life a lot easier.
All right, we'll go to the next slide.
All right.
Right after the table path, that's good. So thank you, again, I know we've already kind of gone through, some stuff, so now we're gonna talk more about the long-range plan in addition to just the debt service budgeting and how we use that from a capital planning perspective. We'll talk a little bit more on that, but also just talk about from the general fund projection side as well. So I'm gonna go through just a quick overview, and then Chris is gonna run through some information as well. And then I'll wrap up, kind of talk about the fund balance and the future projections. But, so just to start, and especially since this is our first time being in front of the board and presenting this information, if you don't have a background on long-range planning or what is its purpose, why do we do it, a couple things to just be aware of. When we talk about long-range plans, really what we're trying to do is take a look over the next 5 years at what our trends are and what our projections are for revenues and expenditures, and then what we might have to do in terms of reserve and fund balance use accordingly with that. And it really helps us kind of project out in the future and see how things are going, see financial health of the district, and also just be aware as we're making long-term commitments, whether it be in terms of the capital program, staffing, educational program, things like that. If we're bringing new things on, we can factor those into the long-range plan and see how do those things impact the future as we roll forward. A couple things to just distinguish. I know you're going to be talking about your budget tonight as well. The long-range plan is not the same as the budget, right? We are trying to take a look at what I would say is a more realistic or direct look at what we think is going to happen. So when we talk about 25, 26 in a little bit, we're not saying take those numbers and build your budget based off of that, right? There's any number of reasons why you would build your budget differently. We will talk about some of the things in terms of like tax cap and capital exclusion, why, how that should impact your budgeting. But in terms of like building your actual appropriation budget, you have to be a little bit more conservative when you build your budget, because there's things that come up during the year that you can't project for, and if they're not in your budget, then you have no flexibility, right? You don't know if students are going to move into the district mid-year, if there's going to be an emergency project that comes up, things like that. So naturally, your budget may be a little bit more conservative than what we are going to look at in the long-range plan tonight. The other thing is long-range plans are not static documents, right? We always want to be updating them, ideally annually, but at least, every other year. As I'm sure you're all well aware, educational finance changes very rapidly. Just since back before the pandemic started, if you look at just like what's happened with foundation aid in terms of it was being fully phased in, then there was discussions of 20% aid cuts, then it was being fully phased back in again, and now that it's back on the table for whether it might be cut in the future in terms of safe harmless. So things change regularly and they change rapidly. So doing that update annually helps you always just kind of take that fresh look. It's kind of a little bit of a joke. I mean, it's, a 5-year plan is only a 5-year plan when it's presented. The next year it's now a 4-year plan, right? So you have to constantly update it if you want to have that 5-year projection looking forward. So it's always good to update and track it regularly and see how you're turning out better, what changed, what new programs are there, and new mandates from the state, and account for all of those. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris. He's going to kind of go through some of the stuff we already went through with the budgeting, and then also some of the initial projections, and then we'll wrap up from there.
Lonnie, I'm offline again. Thank you. I lost Lisa. We'll go back to you guys, and hopefully Lisa will join us.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
All right. of these pages that I'm gonna go through are gonna look very familiar, because Jason just went through some of them in the debt service document, a little bit ago. But again, your $25 million capital project, just including our financial plan for that. Again, the top part of the page.
Alright, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Trying to release it back.
Yeah, I'm setting it again.
There we go. Lisa's here. Okay.
All right, perfect, thank you. So again, the top part of the page has our project numbers for the state by phase. So phase 1, your transportation facility, you received SC approval back in January 24, awarded contracts for that, and the goal is to get the final cost reports closed up in December 2025. Again, that's the point in time which we get building aid flowing on our capital projects. Phase 2, you received approval back in May of 24. It's under our understanding you're out to bid now and planning to award bids shortly for those projects within that phase. Based on the timing of that project, the expectation is that would close out the final cost reports by December 2026 to get aid flowing in the 26-27 fiscal year for phase 2. So the bottom half of the page, the pink boxes represent bond anticipation notes or short-term financings that we do while you're in the construction phase of the project. So the district issued the first ban, the $12.5 million note back in July of 24. That comes due in July of 25. At which point in time the plan is to renew that note and pick up additional funds as needed for phase 2. And then the plan would be then to convert that into permanent financing or serial bonds in June of 26. And so the goal would be to structure that debt service in alignment with how your building is flowing by each of the phases for the project. The next slide again is your energy performance contract. So again, targeting a lease financing in the spring, in the next couple months here, to get that rolling, to give you funds to start paying for that project as well. And based on the timing of that project, the expectation is we're doing final cost works in December of 26. So again, like Jason mentioned earlier, going through the debt service document is lining up the principal and interest payments with how the aid is going to flow starting in fiscal year 26-27. The next slide is a look at your building debt. So the first third of the page is all of your capital projects, your existing projects, as well as your projections for the $25 million project. So we've got your debt service in column A, your building aid coming back in column B, and the local share with sitting the levy in column D. E through H is your energy performance contract. So the total debt service in E, building aid coming back in F, and your local share in column H. And then again, you've been doing capital outlay projects, $100,000 projects, and once you start doing those projects, it's good to keep them going, keep them up, keep the momentum going. So we are including a projection in there for those $100,000 capital outlay projects, with your aid coming back in about $68,000 per year for the prior year's outlay project. So that's fitting into the local share as well. The real takeaway from the slide in the 25-26 here is the change going up is that it's about a 2.5% increase, and that's in alignment with what was projected based on the pre-vote planning that was within the $25 million capital project referendum. So that's the first step in the impact of that project. And then just graphically, what does the building need, the local share look like for your debt service for your capital projects? So just a graphical look at that local share levy as we take that step up in 25-26 to the full impact, the 2.5% increase that was projected to the voters back when that project was approved. I'm going to jump back to the next one.
And you all have this, it's on our board docs too, but, so I mean, I know you're squinting to see it, but you should all have it as well.
The next slide in the report is each of these shaded boxes represent bonds that have been issued in the past for your previous bus borrowings that you've done. So all of the shaded ones have occurred. We are currently targeting a March closing for your current bus purchases. So a $350,000 serial bond closing in March of 25. And then on this page, we've included for your 25-26 potential borrowing for that 25-26 bus purchase in August of 25 as well. And then again, just like the buildings, your debt service does have, for buses, there's debt service and transportation aid coming back in on that. So your debt service for your existing bonds as well as the projections out for the future bus bonds, principal and interest in columns A and B with the total debt service in column C. We're getting transportation aid back on our purchases. That's being shown in column D. And what's hitting the levy or the local shares in column E. And again, we have only projected future bus purchases through May of '29, so nothing beyond that at this point. And that's really just within the 5 years of some of the pages that we'll go through coming up shortly here. Then just a graphical look at the local share for your bus. The next page is a look at your fund balances. So it's in the top part of the page is some of your reserves, as well as for capital reserve, tax cert, some of those individual reserves that you have. The real focus on this page that we like to look at is what is your fund balance doing, your general fund balance. And you can see at the bottom of the page, and we're seeing some surpluses being generated in each of the budgeting years, 22, 23, 24. So that's a good thing. And really the focus here is that your unassigned fund balance is right at the 4%, which is allowable for that unassigned fund balance category.
And on a going forward basis, I can't see it there, do you have a projection for reserves going forward?
That'll be when we get to the end of the fund balance piece. I think the one thing to call attention to on this page is we just have the capital reserve highlighted, because that is anticipated. We did like a projection for 25 for the end of this current year. That would be anticipated to go down to 0 because that is you moved a little bit of the money over that was approved as part of that $25 million capital project, and the remainder is anticipated to be moved over in the current year. So you'll see that fund balance drop in 25, but it's kind of a planned use of it based on the capital project.
And then we will probably have to develop at the end of this year a new capital reserve, be able to put more money.
Yep.
Correct, Lisa? I want to say something there.
She's still there.
Okay, she's not there. Come back to 30 minutes.
In general, it's a good idea, if you think the public would support to establish one, because it's good to have it. You're not obligated to fund it, but it gives you an opportunity that if you have those surpluses, you can start to put money away, which can help offset some of the local share review projects.
The next slide that we'll take a look at is your state aid projections for the next few years. So we've got the actuals in there for 23, 24, and the latest numbers for 24, 25, and 25, 26. 25, 26 being based off of the latest governor's runs that came out. Going forward for 26, 27, going forward, we've projected a 2% increase in foundation aid, but have kept all of the other aid categories flat, just to be conservative. And within this page, we do highlight the building aid and the transportation aid separately in orange. Those differ from the state aid, the governor's runs, because we've taken the values from the debt service budget estimates that you have in front of you, and we've applied those going forward since we have a better idea of what our building aid and our transportation aid will be based on the timing of closeouts and final crossworks and the future purchases of buses that we have. So we've overrode those values going forward in that orange shaded, those orange shaded lines there.
Right, those all just match to those summary pages up above based on what we know about your capital project.
Can I ask a question about your interest projections? Are our loans fixed or variable?
The ones that you have that are they're fixed based on we go out to bid for our rates and we go with the lowest net interest cost and the lowest bidder, so they're fixed. They are there's typically call language built in to bonds, so it's either 8 or 10 years after that bond is issued. If it's a 15, 20, or 30-year bond, that bond can be callable and refinanced. Bus bonds typically just the term of them, it's just not attractive to the market. It's a 5-year bond usually. There's generally not a call feature on it, but the interest is fixed for those bonds after you issue those bonds.
So all your existing debt is fixed for the current projects you're in. Everything in here does assume some assumptions right now. We're using conservative rates. I think for the $25 million, we're assuming 4.75 for the bonds. For the lease, we're assuming 5. I'd say that's, right now, today's market, you're more like a high 3, low 4% if you're issuing it. But we have a little bit of cushion built in there just so we know the actual rates.
And in terms of refinancing on those bonds, what is the whole period? How long do we have to wait?
Typically, the market, the expectation of the industry is for a 15-year bond is an 8-year call. So 8 years after you issue it, that's when the bond is typically callable, and that's when we can look at refinancing it. So we do always monitor the market and see if there's any opportunities. And if there's an opportunity, we would present that to you and see if it was something you want to move forward with.
In that full debt service packet, we do have on each individual page when any of those bonds are callable. It looks like one of your older bonds is callable right So then, starting to look at the forward projections, Chris already went through on the state aid side of things. We break that out as a separate line just because there are so many categories that go into that. Now this looks at the more of the full revenue picture. So that, there's a couple different lines here. Obviously, that other than state aid, the other big one is your tax levy. That's the other big piece of the revenue side budget and the one that you have the most control over, albeit, still within the confines of a tax cap. So what we have on here,
Just keep talking. Sorry about that.
it's okay.
Just having lots of technical difficulties.
It's okay. You'll see across the top here in the blue shading, that we're assuming that in this long range plan that you are going to go to your maximum tax cap number in each of the 5 years, right? So I mean, you can do whatever you do as you talk about planning. Some districts, you'll go flat, you'll go 2%, whatever. This is what we're projecting the tax cap will look like over the next 5 years, and we have a page later on that supports this, but this is assuming you would go right to the cap is what is in these tax levy increase numbers. One thing we did break out, just because I know this is important with the project coming on, you'll see in the next year, 25-26, the cap is projected to be at 6.4%. And that's partially because of that 2.5% increase for the current project, and that's excludable because of the way the tax cap is set up. And then the remaining piece, 3.91%, would be just kind of from what you get with like the growth factors and inflation and everything. So that's more in line with what you'll see in the other future years. And you'll see after we take that one step in 25-26 for the capital, then we're at that level and stay flat, no additional increases needed for the capital project beyond this upcoming year. So we did want to break down and just give that distinction. Other than that, most of the other revenues we've left fairly flat. Use of money and property, that's like interest earnings. We did bring that down just a little bit from what you've earned in the last 2 years because the Fed has been cutting rates. So while we still anticipate fairly decent interest earnings, maybe not quite as good as they've been, but everything else other than what we've talked about in the state aid and tax caps is relatively flat. One thing to call to your attention on this page, and we'll have the same thing in a minute when we talk about expenses, is we take a look at what's that average increase, and that's important to understand with how this all works when we put it back together and look at the fund balances. So your average increase on the revenue side over the next 5 years is 3.83, based on what you're allowed to do with the cap and what we're projecting on the state side. So if we want to go to the next page and start looking at the expense side of the budget. So this is a high-level look at your expenses, and basically we're taking where you're anticipating ending this current year and projecting forward based on historical trends. So just using averages for salaries and other categories and health insurance. And again, we have all the debt service projections as well. So the key thing here is when you look at it with all the projections we're making on the expense side, we're at just under 6%, 5.97%. So that is a common trend we see anytime we do these long-range plans. As a school district in New York State, you have a lot of people, and that you want to be competitive, so that's difficult in terms of salaries and benefits and all that, and that's a growing cost. We all know how high health insurance is right now, whether it be for K-12 finance or on the private side. It's just a very difficult cost to absorb right now. But what we'll see when we get to the fund balance page is because the expenses grow at that pace, while the revenues kind of lag behind, and we only have so much control over the revenues with a cap and state aid being out of our control, you start to see kind of a further and further spread if we don't make adjustments. So when we go to the next page, the fund balance projections, a couple things to talk about here. So as on the top part of the page is kind of the year-to-year snapshot of revenues and expenses. So you see those are red, so we're projecting deficits on the future, and that's because of that difference where our expenses are growing at a faster pace than our revenues. That's not uncommon when we see these. This is a common projection, and really what you're trying to do is manage to the best of your ability to kind of make sure you're maximizing those revenues wherever possible. We're going to talk about in a minute kind of the impact of if you don't go to the cap, and then also trying to manage the expenditure side however we can, in terms of looking at our program, looking for opportunities for cost savings, cost sharing with other districts, municipalities, anything like that, to try to continue to push those off. So, one thing I will highlight is as we look at the bottom and we look at your overall fund balances, the good news as you start to look out, you are still solid for the next couple of years, right? There are times where you look at these and the cliff is much closer because districts haven't been going out of their cap, they haven't been building those reserves strong position as a starting point for right now, and this is just a good eye-opening exercise as you make any kind of long-term commitments to know that if we are not going to the cap, if we are increasing expenditures, things like that, that those red numbers could start coming at us a little quicker, so we want to make sure that we're being cognizant of that. This is also the page, I think this might have been what you were referring to earlier, where this would look like your reserves are being spent down. We did show the capital, because we know that one's getting used this year, so we showed that going to zero. The other restricted reserves we haven't tapped into yet, but basically those would be, that's why you set those aside, those retirement reserves, Adwar, things like that, so that if you do experience this over the next couple of years, these deficits, you can start to tap into those and use some of this restricted money to push the red on your unappropriated fund balance out further as you evaluate your program and kind of see if you have to make any longer term structural changes to maintain that kind of healthy financial picture that you have right now.
And not to say, but when you guys look at this, there was far less red than you thought would come forward in a typical time that you just.
Then we've seen in other ones, yeah. To be
That's a
honest,
positive thing.
5 years
It's a good
is
thing.
a good thing.
Less red is good.
Yeah. And there's a lot of things that can change this too, right? We haven't projected any other increases on foundation besides the 2%. I think health insurance we're projecting like 10%, so if that could get controlled a little bit better and come in under, there's some room for movement to the positive, but these are I will say conservative but not completely unrealistic expectations as you look forward. So.
And just a preset budget conversation is when we're talking about budget, a lot of us, we're giving you assumptions on our budget presentation in February because we do not have set numbers either, so give me the idea that they're guesses, right? And we're always going to be conservative in our first guess, and then March will probably be a little bit more understanding because we'll have better numbers and better understanding of where we are.
So then just a couple other things to kind of highlight as we look at it. This is our projected tax cap page. This is how we're arriving to those tax levy increase numbers. There's a lot of details on here, but basically we're just kind of taking a historical look at what your growth factors have been doing and what the allowable levy factor is, factoring in the capital exclusions and all that. The real key takeaway from this page is right in the middle there. We have that line that says no supermajority votes needed. So we're not anticipating, in order to make this plan work, we do not have to go for any tax cap overrides. We're staying at or within the tax cap limit in each year as we go forward. And then on the next slide, just as a thought exercise, we went to it. I believe that the district has traditionally gone pretty close to your cap number, if not right at it. So that's a good thing, or that maybe you've gone under a little bit in the past. Okay.
Not by much, though.
Yeah, I think this past year, right, we were at the cap,
Yep.
and then a few years before that, we were under our cap.
Okay. So you kind of you might be under, but going at least not at like zeros necessarily maybe. This is just kind of a thought exercise to show you what happens if you go under the cap, right? So as we look at the long range plan, on the top part is what if we just went at 2% each of the next 5 years? That's a common thing that people think. That's how the tax cap was rolled out. It's a 2% tax cap. It's never really a 2% tax cap because of all the factors that go in, but that's something that's out there in the public a lot, and people think it is. So if you use that as a benchmark compared to going right at your full maximum cap, what does that look like? And there's the year-to-year impact of what you're leaving on the table, right? So 700,000, 500, 300, whatever it is, and that people think about that number. But there's also a cumulative effect of not going to the cap because you start from a lower number the next year, and that's what drives the formula is your starting level. So you can see when you actually run out the full numbers, if you went at 2% for the next 5 years instead of at the projected maximum number, you would be leaving $8.7 million in uncollected revenue on the table that you can't get back without going for an override in the future. So when we look at that fund balance page, it didn't look that bad. There were red numbers for sure, but the real impacts were 4 or 5 years out. If we don't go at the cap, if we leave that money on the table, so to speak, then those numbers start to come back up a lot quicker. So that's something to think about as you're planning, especially in this upcoming year when it's a higher number that you might be a little bit more uncomfortable with, but we know that we have to use 2.5% of that for the capital project increase. So if we're not going to that cap, then we're kind of leaving revenues on the table that are not there to help fund our general educational programs that are just the capital piece. So that's just something to think about as you really get into the heart of your budget discussions this year, is that long-term impact of not going up to those capital numbers and what that means for that fund balance page. just kind of wrapping up with the same thoughts we've already kind of hit on, that certainly, you know, the pictures, although there's some good numbers there, it's, you're in good shape compared to what we see in some of these other presentations, but it's just something to continue to evaluate, you know, as you look forward and think about, you know, when you have, when you're planning in terms of your program, what are the opportunities for cost savings from, whether it be shared services with other districts or BOCES, anything like that, or just evaluating, you know, as you're filling positions, kind of the need or the ability to kind of use those with your program. So that's kind of the overall picture. Any questions on any of that information we run through tonight? You know, we kind of threw a lot at you, haven't heard.
Lisa, anything to add?
I think that they did a great job. I think the slides at the end of the presentation tell a story that the board may not realize, but it's something to keep in mind as we plan for the future 25-26 budget and going forward.
Thank you, Chris and Jason, for
Thank you, and thank you to Frank and Lisa as well. There's a lot of information they had to gather to help us put this report together, and some back and forth in meetings beforehand to make sure everything was looking well. So appreciate their time and efforts as well to help build this plan. So thank you.
And as far as I just have a question, is this is the first time you've seen something of this magnitude for the board? Do you find this to be useful in our planning and understanding, and also transparent for the community and looking at where our funds are, where our debt services are, and really where we look as a 5-year plan going forward? So, good. I'm glad. Thank you, guys.
Yep, thank you.
With that, we'll move to item 3.2. We'll move past item 3.2 to item 3.3, the superintendent's report.
Okay. Well, a couple things going on behind the scenes. If you see me on my cell phone, I really apologize. I think Alani's here tonight because we're having some internet issues and we don't know why. So he's working through it as we're here, and I appreciate you, Alani, for
That's right.
figuring it out.
Good thing I don't know where the sledgehammer is.
Yeah. And I appreciate everybody's patience as we work through the technical difficulties that we're having. And also, there was a question during the audit committee about middle school students not being able to access the job lot. I did text Paul Franchini and Brianna Olson, Paul Franchini being our food service person, Brianna Olson being our principal. Brianna is going to clarify it with our school community. She said students can use it during their lunch period. Students cannot have caffeinated drinks. We had students grabbing drinks on their way back from PE and bringing drinks into class and they're arriving late, so impacting the instructional moment. So maybe that is why they're being told they can't use it anymore, because they were using it in times that delayed their ability to get to classes on time. And that's always been a similar rule, and this is also we'll be reaching out to the school community to clarify. So, and please don't ask me any other questions that I don't know. And if you have questions regarding the middle school structure and what the principal is doing, please email her directly, because I have no clue. Okay?
Cutting to our school department.
So, moving on next, well, I do believe it's also coming from staff members saying kids
Yeah.
are coming to class time.
Yes, that would be it.
What I heard, that issuing of passes constantly because they were coming late from job, that was really the issue.
It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So, my report, capital project update, so, and we're gonna do a budget report shortly, so I will be short because Lisa and I will be talking longer. Hopefully Lisa will be able to speak and be on the internet, because she's got a lot of things that I don't know how to say correctly. So capital project update, the transportation facility is moving along. The panels are going up, so that is positive. We should have all the panels up on the building by the end of this week. After the panels are up, they are on one side and now the other, then they put the roof on, because if not, it's like a giant sail, and we would lose the roof. So panels first, then roof, and we're going. They have heaters on the concrete down there because they're heating it up, and I'm not a construction person, even though I sit in these meetings and learn about it as much as I possibly can. But our construction manager and the engineer is doing everything with them to make sure it's right when they pour the footings. But they are going to be pouring the footings this week and working through that. Again, not an engineer, not a construction person, but we do have people oversighting all of it. And then after that's done, we should be able to move a lot quicker, because then they'll be able to get the roughings in, the footings in, and moving quicker until now. It looks like a June occupancy date, so we should be able to get in there in June, final completion in July. And that's where we'll get our CO now is in July, but we should be able to start transitioning in June. That means we do have to do a lot of work on our end about surplusing the transportation facility now. Some of the lifts that aren't going, backing up some of those that are there, so we do have to clean that up a lot as well. So that is something you'll be seeing in the next couple of months, is you'll be seeing a lot of surplus and items coming forward to the board. We did go.
Does that interfere, because I thought you were looking at a mini?
I'm going right now, so you're totally right on board, Kathy, thank you. And so we went out to bid, and for the elementary school project, the bid documents and bid projects all say late June start. So we were trying to get in and do the site work a little bit early, but given the June time and bid times and everything else, we're working and making sure they get out. The bid should be coming back at the end of February, then by March at the board meeting, we should be able to award the bids, if all goes well, at the March meeting for us to start in June at the elementary school. So that's going to be everything across the board to fully understand where we are. My goal is that we're going to start this in late June, close the elementary school down completely. That means the site itself will not be occupiable by anybody because of the fact that there's going to be so much work happening at the elementary school, both site work and inside the building. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of work for our staff to get everything done, and we're also going to be pushing the time frame of starting school. We are pretty sure we'll be able to start on time. You know, I've done this before. I've been in buildings at 3 o'clock in the morning and having kids come in the next day. Like, sometimes when you do capital projects, there is an issue. Sometimes when you do capital projects, there's buildings that are still unfinished and buildings occupied. That does happen. But we're doing our best to plan accordingly and then have backup plan and backup plan and backup.
So, crazy question.
Yes, no crazy questions when it comes to capital projects.
But since we, knock on wood,
Yep.
haven't used our snow days yet.
So,
I know we have them in the calendar, like around Memorial Day, but would we be better off adjusting those to get people out of school earlier at the end of the year?
so it is something that I've looked at, maybe give those snow days at the end of the year, maybe 1 or 2 of them, so people then can maybe even get a little bit more work done. It really depends on when the bids come back and where we stand. Those 2 days aren't going to save us a lot of time, because we can do we can do site preparation and getting everything on site 2 weeks before school starts. And so finding out, it really is gonna be how much time and how on schedule will those construction people be to get that work done in July and August, so then we can move forward. That 1 or 2 days early isn't gonna help us. It's that 1 or 2 days on the back end, where I may have to take a professional superintendent's conference, and maybe we have it scheduled for March, and move that to the front load of the year. I may have to do that, right? That might come up as like, oh my gosh, I can't start school, I need an extra day to get teachers in the building. I may have to take the professional development day that we had scheduled and switch it forward. Or one of the 182 or 181 instructional days that we had planned, we can only, by law, it's 180 days, instructional days, and it's 176 instructional days. For conference days, we have a couple extra days as part of our contract. Maybe I make those non-school days for students, but have them for teachers. So I have a backup plan on top of backup plan on top of backup plan. Hopefully it never gets to that point, and the original plan works. But the goal is to get it done, get it started, and be able to at least occupy the building come September. Depending on the way the bids go, the site work at the elementary school can go 2 ways when it comes to our backfields. We're doing a lot of we're doing some of the drainage work, which is a large part of the drainage work that has to get done, and then there's feeder drainage work. So we're doing the large part, and then on the far end of the elementary school, it's very, very wet. If you ever notice that when it rains, it's almost like a mud field when it gets closer to where that is. So as part of the base bid, that's going to get ripped up as well. An alternate on it is to rip all of it up and replace some of the 30-year-old drainage that is on top of it, because there's 2 levels of drainage. Again, not an engineer, not going to speak specifically to it. If that happens completely, that field will not be occupiable until probably spring, because we'll have to make sure it's seeded, done correctly, and being able to have the opportunity for it to grow, to be safe. So, and I've been speaking to the community groups that are aware that utilize that field. So Any questions on any? It's exciting and it will be amazing when it's done, but capital projects and building work is never easy and it can be painful. But when it's done, it's fantastic. And as they noticed before, to make sure that we align with our debt services, and that's why we're seeing that 2.5 this year, because our debt services isn't completely aligned. To make sure that we're aligned, we will have to go out for a project in the next 2 years, so that way when our debt services falls off in 5 years, we don't see a tax levy impact, and it's automatically adjusted into the program. That's why this long-range plan is so important to help us forward. Moving on, any questions, capital project? Okay. The cell phone update proposal. So that actually is the governor's cell phone update proposal. I just wanted to talk about it briefly, community-wise, because it's out there, and I don't think people fully understand all the time when things are said by the governor. They're not set in stone. So if they say, well, we're going to do a ban on cell phones, that doesn't mean it's done, because it's got to be, you go through the legislation, go through it, and the bill has to be approved. But that's the proposal that she has that they're out there. So I want to clarify a few things in the governor's proposal. It is no internet-enabled devices by students during the school day. Does not include Chromebooks, as far as I'm aware of, because those are school-provided internet devices, if the internet works. And we got to talk about.
Yeah, I think it's like personal.
Yeah, but I wanted to clarify because someone did ask that question. It's personal student devices. Parents and guardians are supposed to be told that there are different ways to communicate. This is part of her proposal, and that has to be set out. So, like, if you want to get a hold of your student, the school has to tell you specific ways on you being able to do so. The proposal would also require at least one method for on-site storage for students. This is the important part. It does not mean that the schools have to buy the under bags. Okay, it can mean that lockers would be a permitted method of on-site storage. So having a locker for a student, permissible on-site storage. If the student refuses to do it, having a safe in the office to hold that would be another permissible one based off of this proposal legislation. I heard somebody say, well, the governor wants everybody to use gender bags. That's not what the proposal is. You know, I know that they're pushing towards a lot of those. That is not what it is. There is supposedly money in the budget for those things. Was that me?
13.5 million.
Yeah.
For the whole state.
Right. But, so I wanted to really clarify, they say lockers can be utilized. There
So
are exemptions.
students can leave their phone in their locker?
Correct.
Okay.
That's what the proposal states. There are exemptions to that, is what the governor said, when authorized by a teacher or district or BOCES specific for educational purposes. For management of student health care, we have students who have diabetes and they look at their phone to be able to manage their blood sugar levels. Emergency situations, which is odd if you can't use it, that's going to be interesting. Translation services or where required by law. So there are abilities to do this. I think an important thing that people are missing on this is the reporting component of this that is also in there. In 2026, school has to report the non-compliance aspects of it. So if you had, how many students that you had disciplinary issues or non-compliance of the cell phone component. So 25, 26, you do it, when year 26 starts, then you have to report how many infractions you have of students being caught using their phone, which I think is very interesting, but it is in the proposal. Our district advisory committee has met. They've discussed the district advisory committee with staff on it, and also students. The principal's going to be working, the high school principal's going to be working to get student surveys out. I think the initial thought process by our staff and committee holders is that we can use lockers as means to teach students the appropriate way to utilize cell phones, not buy the underpack and make kids force them to use it, because, you know, as I was told, people will buy burners. You know,
People will buy Harbor Freight magnets, and
Yeah.
this is just gonna be the prohibition all over the
Right. So I think it's an opportunity for the district, which they've already been doing, because the middle school said that, you know, they did it this year, they stopped banning the cell phones, they went through some bumps in the road, but they're training our students now, so it's a great opportunity to use that model to build into the high school, to teach kids an appropriate way or time to use cell phones. I apologize, I said, I'm using my cell phone, I apologize, but I wasn't using it for any other purposes, right? Teaching kids, teaching people how to use it is important. You know, making sure there's guidelines. So I think we could do that well within the policy. I think we're already leading towards that way anyways. This governor's proposal will just help kind of get it there. Questions? I just kind of wanted to clarify.
Do you know what position, if any, NISBA is taking on aspects of this, particularly the reporting requirement?
I haven't heard much much about the reporting requirement. That was my own little kind of I was looking at it going, huh, there's a reporting requirement.
Yeah, no, I
It's not
see.
catching a lot of aspects. And I get it to understand the infraction component. From basic conversations with legislators and understanding what has been said, I do believe, you know, it is union. Kids are 100% on board. Something has to be done to teach our students. More conversation here to be able to teach than just to be able to cumulatively discipline. And you know, I'm always for the teaching component more so than the modifying behavior by discipline. In the end, that's not going to work, right? Because as soon as the child leaves, if they don't learn it, you give them that bus, they're on it 24 hours, right? When they're home, they're doing it too. So, you know, I get it, I understand it, I respect it. I've seen the data on, you know, the reasons why. I have colleagues who utilize the other tax and had great success in their districts. I think in our district, there is a possibility of moving forward without using those and just creating a good structure and getting a lot of stakeholder voices. Questions, thoughts?
And how, in general, how is it working out in the middle school?
So at the district advisory committee, there was middle school staff and principals, and I asked that same question because, you know, 6th grade, they got that on lock. 7th grade, a couple little bumps here or there. 8th grade, I think it's a little bit harder because the kids have not had that same expectation. So, and that's to be expected with an implementation. So as we're moving forward, we think that you're going to see that 6th grade mentality travel to 7th, and after a few years, it'll be a basic expectation. We have a spot, we have a spot in the middle school, and I think this is the most amazing thing in the world. It's down in the back, over where the pack is. So if you go to the middle school hall and go all the way down, there's a stairwell that goes back, and there's doors, and it's open, right? We tell the kids, don't go back there. I've never once caught a kid back there, right? There's an expectation, this is not what we do. Our students, for the most part, they understand that expectation, they respect that expectation. We monitor that area, we watch it on camera, there's never a kid back there. You know, so if you can set that expectation up as a standard within your building and as a practice of expectation, kids are adhere to it. And I think it's that basic respect. And I think that's what you'll get to with cell phones. Rachel?
I'm just very loud right now. Thank you.
Move on then. And the last thing is a speed limit change. So, your Route 156, this has been a long time, I have to say. I do want to, I'm not going to say the parents thing because I didn't get permission from the parent to say it. The parent community has been helping me with this, and I appreciate him for doing so for the past 2 years. He's been helping me contact people and work with people. If you ever notice at our elementary school on 85, going up on 432 Sail Road, there's a speed limit change. It's 20 miles an hour. On Route 156, there is not a school speed limit. So it's kind of awkward because it's built in. So we've been petitioning to get that speed limit change, especially now with Anthony Ramos and other, you know, the traffic getting even more. We want to be able to have it there so it can be enforced, people understand, go slow through the school year. I was told by DOT that it was approved. They will be giving me a letter about the signs going up. So it's positive after almost 2 years of conversations and planning, we are going to be able to have that change to a 20, you know, school speed limit zone in that area of Route 156. So that's positive. I do want to thank the parent who called in and let him know. Again, I didn't get permission to use the name, so I don't feel comfortable, but there was a key community member helping me with that. And that is all I have.
Nope, 3.4 budget presentation. Okay.
All right, Lisa. Lisa, please tell me you're there.
I'm here, I'm here, I'm
Okay.
just taking notes.
It's budget presentation time.
Okay,
So this is me and you. Do you have the slideshow up? I fear that if I show it to you, I'm going to.
yes, I do,
Okay.
I do.
I'm a little fearful that if I were to show it, that I would lose you. So I apologize. All right. I'm going to do the slideshow, and feel free to talk, and I'll point to you as we go, okay?
Thank you.
All right. So the first page, as you know, is our vision statement. And I think this is important. Lisa and I talked about this a lot, and I really kind of want to go through it because as we're looking at the budget, and as our long-year range plan says, is that we do have to look at, you know, what we do, what our spending is, making those decisions of cost savings, or if we have attrition, or what we offer to make sure that we can level out our year-to-year spending as a district, right? Because it is a business, and we gotta make sure that what we do is sustainable. So this vision statement is important, because it guides a lot of our decisions, as along with our mission statement. I'm not gonna read it, y'all know it. So our goal statements and our budget align. So when we're looking at our goal statements, they encompass student achievement, staffing, financial responsibility, that's the past 45 minutes of conversation, communication, and safe, supporting learning environments. All of those goal statements lead into how we create a budget. So the goal of the budget is to provide as many sustainable programs for students that limit the impact on taxpayers to only what is needed. So if what only is needed, if we use that as the tax cap maximum, that's what we're talking about, right? And then if the board says, well, if the tax cap is 6.4 and we don't feel comfortable doing 6.4, then we have to understand is where does the board want to be? So then with our taxes, so then we can make those decisions to still align to meet the needs of our students. And that's that balancing act that we need to make sure that we're constantly doing as we're creating budgets. Questions so far? Lisa, you want to take over?
Sure.
All
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously we've been meeting with administration since probably beginning of December, and in January they were supposed to provide, and they did provide information on their individual building budgets and department budgets. And we've been going over facility projects, the safety, mental health supports, curriculum, and recommendations stemmed from the district level recommendations that align with board goals. So on slide 6, 20th, we're looking at 2 large 72 passenger diesel buses.
Did I lose you, Lisa?
One audits, there's an IRS initiative as well. The diesel buses are aided over 5 years, and the electric buses are aided over, and this is incorrect, I apologize, it's 12 years. I believe there's a proposal to have them aided over 8 years. How
Lisa, you there?
aided over for the first, yes,
Yeah, you
No?
broke up a little bit, so I just want to clarify. There is a proposal out right now that I think is getting a lot of traction, that I think is going to happen to drop it down to an 8-year transportation need ratio. So it is 12 for electric buses, but as you know, there's basically a 10-year warranty on those buses, and that 8 years is basically the maximum of some of the battery lives. So there is a large push from a lot of different groups. I put one of the groups that has been advocating for this. To change it over, I do believe you're going to see that change to an 8-year transportation need ratio.
Do we have concerns that politically this might not be supported? Like, moving forward?
EV buses. Lisa, you still there? I'm going to answer this question. I just want to confirm you're still there. Simon, I'm hoping she comes back on, and I'm hoping Lonnie went to go do something because I'm dying here.
You just call her and
Yeah.
hook her up to a speaker?
Yeah, I'm just going to do it this way. All right, I'm going to call Lisa, and then I'm going to answer your question, Kathy. And I promise. I'm just going to put you on speakerphone. All right. Just talk really loud, and hopefully I'll put you next to a microphone.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to answer the question about electric buses. So let me give a quick tutorial, and we're going to go through there. The governor put out a proposal that we have to buy electric buses, come in a certain time frame. There's been a lot of lobbying legislation that has went out regarding this. Also, there's California's initiative that went through with clean buses and clean trucks and everything else. So everything's tied together, right? I just want to say that it's bigger than just New York. Getting into it is, there's been a lot of lobbying over the years saying we're not going to be able to meet EV mandate to make, to do the switch over as the governor wants to do. And it's not only just in just the need of the buses, it's also with the infrastructure that is out there. So the electrical infrastructure, the school infrastructure. Not all schools are building brand new transportation facilities to meet the needs, right? We want to think ahead and future-proofing where we're going. And also, I was speaking to Senator Overacker, who was at a thing I went at, and he brought up something very interesting. And he's on the transportation committee. He said, think about the bridges. The electric buses are very heavy. Not all bridges in New York State can meet those needs, so they have to be recertified and redone. So I thought that was a very interesting thought process that I've never really thought about before. It's not only for schools, it's how does it impact everything. So given all that information, is it going to, the mandate going to go away? No, I don't believe it's going to go away. It might be delayed for a little while. They might shift it. It might be changed over years. But I don't think we're going to see EV buses go off the table or clean buses go off the table. What I think we're going to see is a transition of how long it takes, what the mandates are of, pushing it out a few years. I'm hoping you're going to see some of those shifts. As the technology gets better, as the clean initiatives get better, as the buses get lighter, as the batteries get lighter, I think you're going to see that change, and the prices will go down, right, on these. You're going to see EV buses coming. Like 10 years ago, if you asked me, were we going to have electric cars like we have now, I would say no way. But they're here, right? So electric cars are more and more often. We have electric chargers in our parking lot. You are seeing that initiative. So I think it's going to slow down. I don't think it's going to go by the wayside. I don't think diesel buses are going to become the future. I do think EV buses or clean buses will be the way. Maybe green hydrogen, maybe other things that are out there. But we're going to see a change in the way that we do things. And I do think that it's fiscally sound for us to look at, utilizing what we have now to meet the mandate that's currently out there too. Like, how do we offset costs, get grants and anything we can to be able to buy an electric bus and to do it? I'm not going to be one of the people putting in 50 chargers in the back and presetting and then not being able to support district funds. Not going to do that.
So my question, I guess I'm looking at, like all the parts and where they come from and, it's bigger than this.
Yeah.
So if like this EPA grant doesn't come through, are we gonna?
I still say we buy a bus.
Okay, I just,
Yeah.
I'm not confident enough with
Yeah.
the climate.
I understand. So to clarify, Kathy, we put in for an EPA grant. We're also putting in for an IRS rebate. If those funds aren't there, then the district has to be able to support it and get the ratio back. Do we still buy an electric bus? Currently, the mandate is still there for 2027. If we don't, and that mandate still stays, we're going to be behind. So we still have to do that. And right now, the mandate's there. I see no ifs, ands, or buts about it changing.
I support, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm clear, I support it, I'm just worried
Oh,
about.
I get it 100%. I mean, this is the balance that we have to ask. These are great questions because it's not our money we're playing with. We're playing with our taxpayers and our community members' money and with some long-range planning for our district. So I think they're great questions. Lonnie, am I okay to go Wi-Fi here?
Yeah, you should try it.
All right.
And I moved it out from behind the giant speaker with the giant magnet.
Lisa, I got 3 bars, so we might be able to have you come right back on if you want.
Okay.
So why don't you try one more time? I'm going to hang up, and then if it doesn't work, I'll call you back. And I appreciate the board being so good about our internet issues today. Thank you. So log on. Okay. If I was in a classroom, I would just pivot and do something else. Try to pivot when I need the person to do it. Oh my gosh, it's not working on me.
I'm
Yeah,
here, but
let's just do it
I'm
this
not
way.
logging, but nobody's here.
Yeah, let's just do it this way. Let's keep going. All right.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, it's better this way, actually. I can hear you just fine.
Okay.
All right. So,
Okay. So
after
we're
your losses.
on slide 7.
Yep.
Okay, so this is the first draft of the general fund budget. We'll go over the revenues, the tax cap, state aid, others. Really brief discussion about expenditures, talk about fund balance and what's the difference. Slide 8. So we wanted to talk about the tax cap. The 25-26 tax cap is $22,343,524. The 24-25, the current one, is $21,114,000. So it's a dollar difference of 1.3 million and change, and a 6.4% increase, which is the worst case scenario. Again, this is the 50% plus one. It does not require a supermajority. And the major increase for the tax cap is 2.5% strictly for the debt service. You may or may not remember at our last board meeting, I said that we would have a significant increase for debt service next year. And unfortunately, we will need at least a 2.5% tax cap increase in order to support that new debt service for the project that was approved in December of 2022. So the difference between the worst case scenario of 6.4% tax cap increase less the 2.5% is 3.9% remaining for all other expenses. That means salaries, that means benefits, BOCES, everything else.
So the way that I had to understand it best when I went to Lisa, because I had to put it in a term that I could easily understand, is like a promise ring, right? So if someone gives you a promise ring, it's like you're entitled, you know that someone's going to eventually say, yes, this is what's going to happen. So we went out with a vote saying that we're going to have to take on 2.5% 2.5% of the capital project as taxpayers. So that 2.5% promise has come due. So that's where that is. So that is there, we need it, it's going to be there for our debt services. If for us to go year over year with our general fund, a small couple additions, very tiny, it's 3.9% that we need to do that, based off of our current understanding. Now, there are things that we don't know yet, and this could go down, but the 3.9 could become 3.2, right, which would bring it down, or it could be 2.9, we're not sure yet. But right now, given what we have year over year with very small increases for a couple staffing things, it's at 3.9. Plus that 2.5 brings us up to that 6.4. I just want to be very, very clear that it's not 6.4 and we're adding all of these things. It really isn't that. It's that 2.5 is important because that is our capital project. So any questions on that? It's just I want to keep hitting at home, and any communication that we share and anything that comes forward is that is needed because of our debt services that we knew we were going to take on. That's why I'm saying it now, and I have a newsletter going out next week that will actually have this same exact information on this one. Moving on, Lisa?
Yep, I'm on slide 9.
All right.
So I'd like to just show you where our estimated 25-26 revenues are as of last Friday. State aid is at 9.6 million. Other revenue sources, 669,000. The tax cap that I utilized was a 6.4% of 22 million. Appropriated reserve capital, and you see I have an asterisk there. The district appropriated 3 million for the December 22 capital project. So that appropriated reserve, obviously, is not needed for 25-26, so it is showing 0. Fund balance, I left at 862,059, and again, that is something that we can consider changing as soon as, the closer we get to finalizing the budget. So I had a total income sources of 33.5 million, which is a decrease of just under $1 million, 970,000.
Questions?
Okay.
Page
The
10.
next slide is very disappointing. I do not have the total of estimated expenses yet. The TRS rate just came out on Friday. I just received an email today about another expense going up. So I will have that by the end of the week. However, this is where I really need the board and Frank to give me some guidance about the tax cap amount to be levied. Does the board feel comfortable with the 6.4? What does the board feel comfortable with? Appropriated reserves. I know that ERS and TRS, those two budget lines are going to be increasing next year. And I know that you have an appropriated reserve for ERS and TRS. What would the budget look like if we dipped into that specific reserve for retirement systems? Appropriated fund balance. Does the board feel comfortable with the $862,000? Is it too much? Is it too little? And again, TRS rates, health insurance rates, and BOCE services, I need those final numbers. And those are big budget categories in order to finalize the budget. Unfortunately, I don't have them.
So Lisa, you and I did have a conversation, and my recommendation is for TRS and ERS, we would use the reserves.
Yes.
So if we were to use those reserves, that would drop down that levy from 6.4 down a little bit, correct?
That would.
And we have money in those reserves that we put in yearly for purposes to be able to do so.
Yes, absolutely. You cannot use a reserve outside of its intended purpose. You have to use it specifically for an increase in those expenses.
So Lisa, in terms of where any reduction in the 6.4% would come from, is that gonna come from reducing the tax cap levy or reducing the 2.5% that was approved by the voters to set?
Well, I think that, one, you have to levy at least 2.5%. That is set in stone. When the voters approved that project in December of 2022, they were told that it would be a 2.5% tax cap increase. You can see that from the long-range financial plan where that fits in. The question is the difference between the 6.4 and the 2.5. Where does the board feel comfortable? And I'm not looking for an answer tonight, but it's something that you need to consider and have further conversation in March and possibly through April.
My question is going to be, is that we can go to 6.4% right now, reserves stay where they are, spending stays where it is, or do we look at ways for us to limit that down so our burden on our taxpayers is not 6.4% this year? And that would be the operational cost. So we would use TRS and ERS reserves, which we have already. That would help limit that down a little bit. We would look at our operational costs, no program, no people, everything stays the same. I want to be very, very clear on that. You wouldn't lose any of those operational things, but maybe you would look at your maintenance fees. Instead of buying a $50,000 bench rack this year, we would wait, hold off on that maintenance component, and then push it off to another year. So that lowers some of your operational costs. So would the board feel comfortable at 6.4, or do they want me to look with Lisa and get us down to a lower level? We typically run out anywhere between 3.75 and 4.75 to our community. Do we feel 5%? Where do we feel the burden can be on our community? Or do we feel very fine with the 6.4 and saying our community would support that? I think I could look at cutting that down a little bit, but truly it's going to be at the direction of the board.
So when would we expect to have the actual rates for that last line, the TRS, ERS, health insurance, et cetera?
I'm hoping that I'll have all that by Friday.
Oh, good, okay. Because I would feel, I mean, I'm not prepared to, I mean, 6.4 is shocking, and I think people are gonna go, you know, there's a reality of what the costs are, and, you know, you start to look at cutting program and things like that. I
No
would be
cutting
in favor,
program.
no, I know, but I would be in favor of using some reserves if we have them towards some of this. But, you know, we're already committed to the 2.5 for the project. That's already, you know, I don't think we can mess with that. And so I think if we can creatively find a couple things to raise, you know, bring it down a little bit. But I also think there's got to be a very honest discussion with the community about what the real costs are.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's paying in your real life gas and everything else, and it's not going down.
I do want to clarify, and I said this, Lisa, and I want to say this here. I don't believe in increasing the appropriate fund balance. Like, if we do 3.5%, which is 862,000 yearly, I don't feel comfortable in increasing that because you start getting into a very slippery slope by increasing those funds yearly. And yes, you're going to get that money back 1 year, but 2 or 3 years down the road, you're offsetting taxpayer levy, you're offsetting costs, and then that fund balance is going to go back. So I do have major concerns with that. I would hesitantly say that would be something we would look at.
But we do need to establish another reserve for the next capital project.
Right.
Which we know is coming.
Right, cutting into our appropriate fund balance is not going to do.
So don't forget, the board itself cannot establish a capital reserve. The capital reserve needs to be established by voter approval. So if you're thinking about that, the board, for, you know, upcoming years, perhaps you should have a resolution on the May 20th to establish a new capital reserve.
We'll talk about that in the future.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk, like, I'm on the facilities committee, so when you talk about, you know, pushing out the trucks we need because they're, what, 2006, I think, you know, I mean, at some point that all catches up.
The truck is still on the docket. The other maintenance stuff is
Right,
not. But it's going to
we
catch up.
talked about, you know, the satellite fields and all the community use and how we're trying to reseed and get those back in operation. That affects the whole community.
And not all that's actually in this budget because we already had to take some of that out because we knew that we were already at that 6.4. So it is a hard balancing. These are hard conversations. Better than programming people, right? That is the last thing I would like to cut, and we're not there this year. We're actually adding programming people, which is a good thing. But it's that balance.
So
Rachel and Matt both had.
Sure, okay. I just want to be clear, so of the 6.4%, I understand that 2.5 is set in stone, but that's okay. So the remaining 3.9, is that simply what's allowable?
Yes.
Or is that already accounted for?
Allowable and accounted for based on estimations and what's currently in the budget.
Okay.
Using our TRS and ERS reserves, that would lower that 3.9 down to 3.5 or 3.4.
But that was my question, is it just theoretical as to where we can go to, or has it already been accounted for?
We gave you worst case scenario, and now I can dwindle it down if need be and look through it and fine tune those. But we wanted to be very honest coming into this. Of, yeah, if we go up to 6.4, we're at zero gap, we're there, right? Everything's great. But we don't know if that's the best decision to make for our district.
I'd like to tell the board that this has not been a very easy budget to develop.
I think they're getting onto that one.
And the reason why is the whole capital project and the debt service and the planning as to when are the taxpayers actually going to incur that debt and how much are they going to incur. There's been an awful lot of conversations about that. So this has not been like an easy rollover budget. It's been going through every single line item and making sure I've captured everything and haven't been too conservative. So it's been a bear.
And you've done fantastic, so thank you. Rachel?
So I've been trying to recall, my understanding was that, was it last year we worked really hard with Jim to keep the cap at 2% with the understanding, was it the year before?
It wasn't, we were never at 2%.
What was it that
We were careful and considerate knowing that we would incur the debt services.
So we kept it below what we were capped at.
Not by much, but yes. because of the fact that we knew the community voted on that 2.5%.
Right, so that it was
Right.
overall, we had like a cap of
Right.
4.5.
But the debt didn't hit them
And, right.
as anticipated budget.
Right,
So now we are looking
So
at the impact of that
now the
2.5.
debt is going to hit in a year that we, you know, we had anticipated it hitting and we kept it lower then, but.
But
now
even if
it's-
we went lower then, we still would have incurred that 2.5 now.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
Because yeah, we had incurred that the year that it was low, then it would have been fine, but we didn't incur the debt.
Right.
So that, correct, Lisa?
Yep,
Okay,
Yes.
You've schooled me so well that I can speak without you tonight. Very proud of myself.
yay.
So yeah, that's the problem, is that we didn't, yes, we kept it low. Even if you went up 5% that year, we would still be eating that 2.5% now.
Right.
We would have spent that, because if we were going up 5%, you have to have a need to spend 2.
Yeah.
And that would be programming people, which we would then be cutting if we had to. So it's that sustainability component that's super important to create.
Absolutely.
And
Just
you
trying
are
to
right, yeah.
understand that we're trying to anticipate
It was.
that, but at the
The
same.
debt did not hit as anticipated.
And then the other question I have is about the community's growth and how that impacts the actual percentage that people are hit with.
So the growth factor
Okay.
is great. Lisa hit that one, would you please?
Okay, that is like a two-part. First, the growth, there's a growth factor that's assigned to the district from New York State, and that's part of the tax cap calculation.
Which, by the
second
way,
part-
Bernie Downey was very surprised at our growth rates, and they haven't seen
Yes.
that with other communities.
However, the second piece of the growth of your community will show up in the assessed values. So I will call the local assessors on March 1st, and hopefully they'll call me back in the 2 weeks following to provide me with preliminary numbers as for assessed values. I'm sure the board understands that final assessed values don't come out until July 1st. But they should be giving me a good idea of where the district is as far as home starts and businesses.
Thank you.
So you may have a 6.4% theoretically tax cap increase, but that may translate into a lesser tax rate increase.
Right. So even though it's 6.4, it could be 2.5, depending on equalization rates.
Correct, and assessed values.
Correct.
Yep.
And when do you need our input on this?
I need you to mull it over in the next month, so that way, with the March presentation, we have a better idea if the board feels comfortable with, you know, a 3%, 3.5%, 4%, where you are going.
I would like personally right now is an understanding is, do you want me to look at options for us so that we can look at really understanding, you know, bringing it down to 4.5 or 5.5, or are you like, no, 6.4, we're good? Like, as Kathy, you said, 6.4 shocking, and I saw that, Lisa will tell you, I kind of went, what? You know, because again, taxpayer, I live here too, you know, so I get it, you know, we all live here. So my question to the board is, do you want us to dig deeper to look at maximizing that to say, where can we get that levy to comfortably, knowing that we're still leaving money on the table, but not too much money on the table to still understand where we're going? Or are you guys 6.4?
I'm always uncomfortable leaving too much money on the table because it impacts future years. And some of those years are, you know.
Yeah.
Because I think we'd like to see some options.
But I would like to, yeah.
Yeah.
Adoptions like TRS, ERS, things like that. I will say, there are two things built into this budget now that I'm not taking away, that are additions that I feel are very important keeping in. One is going to be an assistant principal at the elementary school. There are 575 students at that elementary school. The dean of students is great and wonderful to have that, but they really do need the support of an assistant principal down there, administrative duties and expectations. That is not a large impact because you're not adding a whole other position. So the dean goes back into the other position, so that frees up that one salary of a teacher position to be added to the administrative line. So it only adds about $30,000 into the budget, And if you look at retirees coming back in or going off on a rollover, it doesn't add too much into that budget. So that one is not a huge budgetary impact. After looking at our services and what we are able to offer and supply right now, again, my principals have given me a list of things to add. There's a couple other things that are on the possibility of adding. So if I am able to get this down to 5.5, but maybe I can add this position, I might go, no, it may be 6.4 because I want to add this position. So, but these other positions are in now. Is a social worker grades 5 through 8. We have overmet our needs for our social workers, especially 6 through 12 with the caseload. They're doing IEP counseling almost full time, all the time. That doesn't allow for, groups. It doesn't allow for all the other components. It doesn't allow for at-risk or deregulation or specific counseling to support kids because there's just not enough time in the day for people. So that social worker is actually really needed in the building to be able to help support based off of caseload data. So it's a need. It has to happen. There are a couple other positions and supports that we're looking at, but it really is depending on where can I go with this budget. So say I get this down to 5.9, but I look at having an AIS position as we talked in the curriculum, 0.6 AIS math teacher. Well, I can get this back to 6.4 if I add that math teacher. So I really do want to look at the budget, understand exactly where we are, and there's some hard decisions and conversations to look into. But those are the two specific added value positions that are in it right now as we go forward.
So if you were adding an assistant principal at the elementary school, you wouldn't have the assistant principal in the dean?
No, the dean would go back into the position where they were. So it does free up money. Because again, as Brian Downing was saying this, it's an allocation resources. How do you combine, how do you develop with still being able to offer a program?
So I'm never gonna say we should figure out ways to save money.
Yeah.
And save taxpayers' money. At the same time, I'm cognizant that we have some future needs that we've been talking about. And yeah, I think at least some members of our community expect us to get there. We haven't said a lot about that publicly. I think you maybe mentioned it here and there.
It's the project coming up that we're going to need with.
Right. So,
Kind of leaning towards it. Like we have a project here, some deferred maintenance issues at the secondary complex. We want to get there. How do you future plan for that?
so I think, we just sat through 45 minutes of long-range planning and debt service presentations, and, if we don't come out of the full cap, we're gonna hurt ourselves in, 5-6 years out, where we might be negative. But I think if we're, reserving and planning and figuring out how to be as, cost-effective as possible, even if we come out at the max, I think that's responsible. We know where we're gonna end up if we don't.
Lisa and I will really dig deep, look at it, understand exactly where we are, and really look at our options. And if we were going to go down to like maybe less shocking, which would be like 5.9, or something, we'll give options of how that would be, but really understand. I don't see us getting lower.
Yes.
Year over year, we're 3.75 to 4. That's our year over year average, right? And with 2.5, you're already there. So, we might be able to get down a little bit, but I'm not seeing us getting down that much anyways, just because of where we typically are yearly.
Which you can, and to me, personally, I don't think that too fine a point can be put on it, piggybacking off of what Artie said, which is that, in some ways, and this is a little bit of editorialization on my part, is that tax cap is counterintuitive in that it sets a limit that if you do not go up to that limit, you are then costing yourself money in future years, as opposed to pre-tax cap is 1 year you could choose to stay at 0 if you wanted, and you're not penalized for then the next year, maybe having to do some catch up. So that's the limit, and that's what we have to deal with, and I do agree with Archie that you need to have the foresight and invest in public education as important as it is, and not find yourself behind the 8 ball down the road.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is really probably important for components, because the tax cap is what you're supposed to be going at, right? That's kind of, this is the max that you can go as a community. I think that's an important communication to let people understand. It's not, well, you should or shouldn't. It's, here's what you're allowed to do, and that's why it's there, to stop that 12% that people were seeing prior to the tax cap coming in. And this community did see 8%, 12% increases before tax cap. I mean, that did happen in 2000, 2002. There were those increases before equalization rates. So, any further questions, comments, thoughts? I will state, Lisa is right when she's saying this is a bear of a budget. She's not kidding. Lisa, our business office, myself have been putting a lot of time into really fine tuning this budget this year and working to it. It's not an easy one. What we got to here took a lot of effort and work. So like when you see 6.4 and you're going, well, that's shocking. Please trust me, it was a lot higher before we did that. So, you know, the effort's getting into this and we're going to continue to work on it. Lisa, any closing thoughts?
No, I think you said it all. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, everybody.
Lisa, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
And look, if we didn't have cell phones, we're going to
So, the budget calendar is all there, available for anyone who wants to see. With that, we're going to move back to the agenda item 4.1, the minutes of the regular meeting from January. Would anyone like to discuss them or just move them?
I'll move it. Or I'll second, or not.
Who in red would like to move it?
I will.
And second?
I will.
All in favor?
Aye.
With that, we have treasurer's report, item 5.1. Discussion or move it?
I'll move it.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
5.2 is the personnel action items, and we have a number of retirements. We have 6 retirements for a total of 137 years of service here in the district. We have Ted Simons, we have Kathleen Missing, who is only 15 years old, we must note. But yet she has worked here for 32 years. Lori Farrell, Kelly Reichert, Brooke Sale, and Lori Saba are all on the docket and all have served this district so well, and we have been better for them.
Congratulations to them.
Yes, wish them a marvelous next step. We also welcome everyone else who will be joining us, but with that, would anyone like to move 5.2 from the supervisor?
Can I ask a question about 5.2, is the volunteer? What is that?
Which one is it?
Volunteer.
Volunteer, 5.2.8. 5.2.8?
Yep. You didn't really say much other than.
It's a volunteer.
It's just coming in to read
Top of the
to
page.
the kids, but we put them on so you fingerprint.
Okay, yes.
It's gonna be a fingerprint
Reading, for reading.
coming.
Also, you need.
We have.
Yeah, so we passed the board policy, 2 years ago.
One-on-one.
Yeah, when, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, good question. Anyone like to discuss or ask questions or no?
The next one down, drama appointments, there's no salary for those,
It's also a fingerprint thing, they're being paid by the
Yeah.
club.
So there's, yeah, when you see that choreographer and play director, the club pays those directly, but we want those people who are working with our children to be registered, so we go through those systems. It's just background checks.
Thank you. Questions?
I will move them.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all, and welcome. If it's all right with all of you, we can move forward with items as a consent agenda. 5.3, 5.4, and 5.5. CSE recommendation sublist and surplus or obsolete items. Any discussion or we move on to it? I'll move it. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a contract with the Voorheesville Basketball Club and also a contract with the Starfish Swim Club. Let's bring them together. If there's any questions or discussion about either or both, or if someone would like to move that.
I'll just say thank you to Frank, because I know a lot of time and energy went into negotiating these contracts. So thanks for that. And I'll move them.
Questions, conversation, or move second? Or second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay. With that, we have the old business of the audit meeting. Or we just-
Because that is, so, you were all there, and it's gonna be budget points, moving forward, so.
And curriculum committee met as well?
We did. The curriculum committee met, and a large portion of the meeting we were joined by Karen Jones, who went over our special education programming that we have. You heard Frank mention that we'll be adding a .6.
No, I said, it's not on the docket
Sorry.
to add, but it was there.
Discussion.
So there were a couple other positions that were, that we
Yes.
discussed curriculum, a special education 1211 class.
Yep.
And a .6 AIS math teacher that we're looking at, but I'm trying to find ways to fund them with the tax cap that we currently have, which they don't currently have. So there's not, what we have is what I have in the budget currently, and then things to be added if I could.
Yeah, so there are some proposals of things that we could do to enhance our special education programming. We also took a look at our languages. Some good news, we were able to, they've been working, I know this is quite the process to do, is to get a seal of biliteracy for our graduates. And that could be a student here that has moved all the way through our Spanish program, or if we have any members of the school community, any students who may be heritage speakers of a language at home, they could also earn that seal of biliteracy. We are always on the quest to try to find some way to add possibly another language, which always goes to, is there some way to share resources with another district, possibly with the languages of either Latin or Mandarin. But the thing is always we would need to align with someone else's bell schedule and make everything, like I said, align, just not easy.
And I am currently in conversations with another school district to see if we can do that, but we're looking at our schedules and purposes, and again, to maximize what we have already budgeted, to be able to support it, not losing any program for people we have here, but adding programming with shared services. It's gonna take a month or two to be able to figure out if it's something we can offer, but crossing my fingers we can. Can I give one quick update?
Yeah.
We did meet with BKW on a certain note, and we are looking at, we do have a couple courses that we're looking at pairing up, so offering courses to their students and our students offering new courses from them, because they offer different ag courses that we don't have, and different courses, so but mutual benefiting each other. So that's a good possibility to add program to our students and still support each other without adding budgetary expense. So,
Can I ask a question about the biliteracy
Yeah.
certification? What do the teachers have to do?
not much.
according to that?
It really is not much. There's a committee that will meet,
Okay,
and Karen Jones is heading it right now since it's only one child,
okay.
and it's really based on the students, the teacher.
So they just have to document the student.
There's a lot of work on the students we have, and then forward, they have to have some culminating project that they present to this board as, the board for the seal of biliteracy, not us, the board. And that's part of the component, yep, and then that has that seal on their diploma similar to our seal of civic readiness.
Thank you.
And I've talked with a couple districts, some districts have their assistant of instruction doing it.
Yeah.
Some schools have their department leader being it, overseeing it. So, sometimes it just gets included with other duties, as they go. And since we only have one child, I talked to the district, they have 250 students who receive the biliteracy, we have one.
Yeah.
So, it's gonna be a growing program, we hope.
Along with new, we had a new course proposal that we looked at, something titled AP Seminar, which could possibly in the future be what our current English 10 honors is. And the idea behind that is
within that AP seminar course, students would learn skills that would then benefit them in further AP courses in 11th and 12th grade. And we had one proposal submitted for our redesigning learning, which is, again, change in instruction accompanied by different seating, say, in the classroom. Oh, what, has there been another one since? Okay, so as of the meeting, there was one, now there's two. Okay.
And that's utilized like in the furniture and the setup and the.
Yep. Yep. So would either of you like to talk about facilities committee meeting?
Yeah, I don't remember the date off the top of my head, but I do remember the conversation. We talked, Neil was there, and we talked a lot about, needs for equipment and truck that, the only one I remember was 2006, and that was amazing, so.
Yes. The work was done by mower.
And
Yeah.
with a truck, and, he talked about, the people that we're working with on the grass and fields and that, thought we were on the right track, and we show signs of the right kind of turf, and it's responding to what we've been doing as far as sand and all that stuff. And that's pretty much it. There's a lot of, what the needs of the department are moving forward and how to have like a 5-year plan for them and their equipment needs.
140 something tons of sand?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay, and the bridge, by the elementary school.
Yeah, we're looking-
And the library little closet office space.
Right,
Yeah.
we talked about, incorporating, getting rid of that closet area and turning it, because the librarian doesn't really use it.
That is actually in the project now.
Right.
That wasn't.
And it would be
involved in
usable
it.
square footage, and
And-
the bridge, I think we're still looking at.
We're looking at the bridge for different options because we did some research on the bridge. It was specifically made to not have gaps in it. And
This is $240,000 bridge.
yeah, well, it was specifically made for that reason. So we're looking to see if we can put tracks or not, but there's a lot that goes into doing the bridge. So we're still working with our architects now.
Sounds good.
If we can just take it off and put trucks on it, would be great. Not as simple as that.
Thank you. Thank you guys for jumping in on that. Nice little last minute. And policy, I was wondering if you can generate the transcript, even though the volume is reading.
There's no transcript to be generated from the hour and 7 minutes lost, yes.
Yes, yeah, because that was all about grade.
Yeah.
grade
If you don't
policy,
know,
which is so fascinating.
the owl that we use, I didn't realize my computer was above it. And I looked up and there was a little red button. And I said, oh my gosh, I think we have been muted the whole time. And we were, so if you look at an hour and 7 minutes in, you'll see my head go like this. And then me kind of like going, oh my gosh. And we tried to recap the last hour and 7 minutes. So I'm not gonna do that now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so when the audio started, I attempted to do a recap, and basically the first part of the meeting, that first hour or so, we spent talking about the draft of the grading policy, that Frank had put together, and it was more of a discussion draft for Frank to then take and, have internal conversations with teachers, staff, administrators, to figure out where students, where to from there.
And that may not come back to the board for another 6 to 8 months. So it's getting pushed down now to get stakeholders.
Well, we can always go back and look at the,
You can try.
Yeah, sorry about
That
that.
was,
It's so funny.
that was not my best moment. I will admit.
Yeah, so, like I said, I tried to do a recap,
No worries.
and then the other things that we got through were, policies 2210, and then 2342, they're both on the agenda for amendments, and those are pretty easy. 2210, the updates there basically had to do with, updating the policy to reflect the model rules from the Committee on Local Government. for broadcasting and recording meetings. And then, 2342, which deals with agenda preparation and dissemination. We just made minor updates to that policy. It had been looked at in 2021. So it was on our radar because we had some conversations about kind of how things get on the agenda, right, and what's the process for a board member to request something to be on the agenda, or even a community member to be on the agenda, and that's all addressed in this policy.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you to all the committees for the hard work that you do outside of this forum right here. With that, you guys ready to go to 7.1, acceptance of donations? Any questions or thoughts?
I'll move it.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you to Hannah for helping. The middle school will be utilizing that, appreciate it. 7.2, there's a resolution regarding stipulation for settlement. Would we like to carry that as well as 7.3, intermunicipal agreement, or their conversation, or would anyone like to move them?
I'll move it.
Yeah,
There's no discussion.
I'll second it, but I want to say
Yeah, you can just.
thank you to Frank for working on negotiating the transportation agreement. Really, no cost to the district.
It's not we are in the capital region superintendents, we're all looking at how to help one another because everybody's struggling with transportation. So these are just one of the steps forward, so the thanks really goes to Annie and the other superintendents.
Yes.
I appreciate it, but.
Yeah,
was-
everyone made that happen.
Yeah.
It's,
And collective
if we had to,
It's a whole group.
if we had to do a run
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
from a neighboring school here, like.
And
it's-
we will do the same for other districts. This
Yeah,
is
exactly.
how it works.
That's great.
You all like to vote?
Yep.
We have a second. All, yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. 7.4, we have the board organizational meeting. And would anyone like to move that, discuss it?
I'll move it.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, 7.5, agenda preparation and dissemination. Discussion or move it?
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. With that, we move to item 8.1, the opportunity for the public to be heard. If anyone would like to speak in a matter particularly one that has been brought up this meeting, go to your ways. And we can move to item 8.2, the opportunity for the board to be heard.
I'm not the board, but can I say something? I just want to thank Lonnie.
Yes.
You know, like, Lonnie was great tonight with that, and also, if you haven't noticed, and we've had complaints from our community regarding our setup for board meetings that has been very difficult to hear. We, based on Lonnie's recommendations, we have new camera system, and we have new systems that we're getting that will look like this, these microphones, which Lonnie said are 100% of the text message I got, so we should not be hearing complaints from our community, and they should be able to access and hear everything, especially our internet issues tonight.
As long as we don't hit mute.
Right, unless I hit you, yes. But thank you, Lonnie, for your attention to that. It's great.
Thank you very
No,
much.
it's good, it's nice we can use this for a lot of other things too. So,
I just want to.
Yeah, absolutely.
we're in a good place now, so when the rest of the equipment comes in, you won't see these purple.
The purple spaghetti is gone.
Yeah.
Thank
But
you,
no,
Lon.
this'll post tomorrow, if you wanna watch it, I have a good feeling it's gonna sound great.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of work that went into preparing everything for this meeting, and just a lot of appreciation goes to many people who were involved in that. With that, the dates to remember, I believe March 3rd is our next board meeting, not March 6th. So mark your calendars, see you all here, save you to see.
Lonnie, these are, oh, they're great. I can't get over how good they're working.
Yeah.
The old ones they're working great with.
Yeah, this is gonna be.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Yeah.
This is it.